Hi, I'm here today with Senator Michael Moore. Thank you for coming.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Appreciate learning about what's going on up at the State House and the role that you play. You've now, how many committees are you on now?
Roughly 5 committees.
Oh, wow.
I chair 2 committees. I'm vice chairman of a third. I'm on the Ways and Means Committee, Workforce Development. I'm trying to think what else.
What do you chair?
I chair Public Safety and Homeland Security.
Okay.
And I also chair this, which I chaired last session also, and I was vice chair ever since I was elected. This year I have a new committee. I am chairing the Senate Committee on Bonding and Capital Expenditures.
Okay.
I previously, for 8 years, chaired the Committee on Higher Education. When I first asked for that committee, a lot of people in the district really didn't understand why, but when I first got elected, the economy was horrible, and you're looking for ways to try to help the workforce, or trying to get people get back to work with new skills, because everyone's getting laid off. In higher education, we have 13, 14 institutions right here in central Massachusetts, and they were providing job skill training, community colleges, looking at careers in the future that our universities and community colleges would be providing the education and the skills for. So it really seemed like a good way to be proactive.
Sure.
Help people who have lost jobs because they don't have the skills to meet the new skills needed with technology advancements, and yet you're giving them the skills now to compete in an industry that has evolved beyond what they've had the capacity for.
And have been forever, a big proponent of vocational technical training.
Yes, so have I. Actually.
And I mean, that to me is the answer. Not just, I wish there was more of that for adult populations, as well as more opportunities for students. I know in Worcester, the last I heard, there were 700 or 800 students who were on the waiting list to get into the technical school. There's this huge need for that. And then their parents, there's years to get retrained into something that will actually turn into a job or a career. And I tend to be a little skeptical of some of the higher education piece of that, because I'm not sure they always train people for that. But I'm an in-the-grounds, gritty, let's get people trained to do jobs that are actually end up being needed, So it's a balance,
Where I've had the opportunity to chair higher education, we have a lot of good schools. There's a lot of good intentions. We did a community college where we did a higher education reform. The first term I was the chair of the committee, and it was backed by or supported by a lot of the industry or business advocates in the Commonwealth, and it was really some of that was of what you're talking about was the focus of it, that our community colleges were not targeting the right skills for the workforce.
Sure.
And there was a lot of resistance from the schools. They thought of themselves as more of an academic institution rather than a vocational school. But everyone says that we need a workforce with all these advanced skills. But those advanced skills today don't necessarily mean a college degree. It could be a certificate, it could be a training program. I went to a forum out in California where it was put on just by some high-tech companies, and they were complaining that we had students that across the country, not just Massachusetts, that there were students that were graduating from 4-year institutions. They had their bachelor's, some even had master's degrees, but they didn't have the skills needed for their specific job sector, and they would have to retrain them. So they were advocating for more of a certificate or specific training type program. We actually just worked with the Blackstone Valley Education Foundation.
For several years now, the Blackstone Valley Chamber of Commerce has been working with manufacturers to try to fill the work skills gap. Vocational schools are at an all-time maximum with wait lists. In our region alone, 650 students each year are put on a wait list with 3,500 across the state. And to compound that, 95% of the students attending vocational technical high schools are going to college. They're not going into the workforce, so this further widens the gap. But this also leaves those students who desire vocational training stuck in college prep courses in public high schools. These high schools are not capable of meeting their needs. We've been working through our legislators and with the Department of Education to write work skills grants. We've been fortunate enough to receive some work skills grants, and we have created a consortium of 13 school districts in our area so that we can have flexible time and these students can get vocational training and credentials while in high school, while meeting their other academic needs at their own high school. But this is not happening across the region, and our big problem is to keep this sustainable. This bill will allow funding for each student who is in a credentialed course while in high school to fund these courses and to keep a sustainable program going. We have one-on-one mentors with the manufacturers. The industry is crying out for these students to be trained, and these students really want to go to work. As the senator said, not everyone needs to go to college. They may go to college down the road, but these students are getting an opportunity to be credentialed. They're desirable employees. They're being offered jobs before they even leave high school, and they're making a good living, a great lucrative career path with no student debt.
And we created a program with the Blackstone Valley Chamber, which oversees this education component, where we're working with manufacturers, Worcester State University. Quinsigamond Community College was in and not in, so I really don't know where they stand right now, but the manufacturers are coming in, and they're providing the software and the different skills, training skills that the students need that are geared directly towards them, so that they can come in, get trained, and then they can go directly into an employment sector.
Sure. Yeah,
So,
I think that's been one of my frustrations. Is there's a place for academic. That's
Yes.
great, but there are a lot of places where that's. To me, the bachelor's is almost becoming like a high school degree used to be.
Yes.
You get
Yep.
that, you pay all that money to get that, and then you have to go and get trained to do something practical. And I guess I'm a pragmatic person more than anything else.
And everyone wants to blame government. Government has
Oh, yeah.
government has a role, but this is where I'm a firm believer too. This is where the private sector has to step up.
Yes.
They've got to step in, and if they see that we are not providing the skills, or the schools aren't providing the skills. I mean, I'll go back 60 years, 70 years. I mean, a lot of industrial companies that were here, they would have their own training programs.
Correct. Yes.
If you can't expect government to provide training for every facet of the economy.
No, that's right. That's right.
So the industry has to step up. They have to come forward. You had talked about the vocational schools. Now, in my Senate district, which is about the southern 35 to 40% of the city of Worcester, I have Leicester, Auburn, Millbury, Grafton, Shrewsbury, Upton, and 2 precincts in Northbridge. I have 4 vocational schools within my Senate district. Worcester Voc, Bay Path, Assabet, and Blackstone Valley. Blackstone Valley has roughly 700 students on the waiting list.
Wow.
Worcester Voc, as you commented, they have roughly about 200 on their waiting list. But if you take all 4, they have about 2,000 students on the waiting list. To me, that's a travesty. We hear the schools say, "Oh, well, they're taking kids that weren't meant to go there." Well, first of all, I'm going to disagree with that, because the skills today need a higher level of degree of education for some of these trades that these students are going into. And also, how do you tell a student that is performing very well academically, or the parents who are the taxpayers, that your son or daughter is doing too well? Go to that student and say, we know you want to go to this school. We're not telling you have to go, but we know you want to go. But because you're working too hard, you're succeeding and doing too well, that you can't go to that school.
And isn't that the old school, not to create a bad pun, but it's the old way of thinking.
Yeah.
That vocational schools, this poor kid is only going to be in the trades. Well, first of all, the trades take a lot of training.
Yes.
And now I know too many younger people who are very smart, but they have an interest in going into not just things that we all need, plumbers, electricians, but now it's robotics and different kinds of mechanical engineering, and really you need to know what you're doing, and you need to be smart to do this, but that's their interest. And why are we suffocating that and hurting ourselves as an economy?
Well, I was just talking to one superintendent the other day and saying, you know, we've really got to try to get away from, we have the traditional K through 12, which has animosity to the vocational schools because of the cost, and they're losing some of the students. We've really got to try to bring them together. Either we have to integrate more of the vocational school type of training into our traditional K through 12, because it's obviously a successful model, because the schools are doing well, or we need to expand what's being offered at the vocational schools. Most careers, and we're going to see every day, we see more technology coming out that's eliminating jobs, and a higher skill level is needed. That we're going to have a better integration of the two. We got to where they're going to have to start working together better, instead of right now being in a competition.
No, I agree. I used to work for Chamber of Commerce in the Framingham Metro West area a few years back, and the then CEO of Bose Corporation, that was their company's thing, and they got the chamber to create a whole program and got some grant funding, which they contributed to promote technical training. And they were looking for technical training. So it's interesting you say that. The vocational schools have to be able to offer more things, and there have to be more vocational school seats.
Right.
And I'd love to see adults at night or somehow be able to figure out a way, and maybe community colleges that you mentioned are the answer to that. So many people who don't have the skills but have the sincere interest in the drive to do something to further their life, they should be able to reach those kinds of programs too in some form.
I agree, and I think that's, again, I think you're right, that's where the community colleges can step in. They can fill that void right now. The problem is you've got, and again, this is not an attack of the system, when you have institutions that consider themselves more of the academic rather than the hands-on, the skilled. I mean, they get involved in some of the programs. They have some limited programs, but there's still a big need for more of these programs. And a misconception that has gone on for, I've been in office now 10 years, going on 11 years, is that we're losing manufacturing jobs. Massachusetts, going back to my first or second term, we've consistently been increasing advanced manufacturing.
But it's advanced manufacturing.
Exactly, and they're good jobs. And they're ones right now that the employers will come to us that they cannot find enough skilled labor to meet their needs. So the problem we're having is when everyone thinks of manufacturing, they think of those old sweatshops from 50 years ago. It's no longer
shoes and furniture. And
that's not the case anymore. And so there's good paying jobs. Where some, and like you talked about with becoming an electrician or a plumber, these are jobs that you can graduate from a voc school or a training program. You can go right into the workforce, an apprenticeship training. You do that for 2 or 3 years. You can start your own business. You can,
it's a great opportunity, but we need to provide.
And there's no student loan debt.
Right, and that's a huge part of it. To the whole picture. It's avoid the student loan debt and be able, as you said, to get a job, start your own business, whatever. And there's a need. Yeah. There's a huge need.
And there's enough people like myself that can't hammer.
I'm the same way. I'm a danger.
You got to call a plumber. You got to call that person. Say, hey, come help me.
That's right. Well, thank you for coming and talking about this today.
We never even talked about the legislation that we're.
Well, we'll have you back, and we'll do that, and we'll be right back. Hoping that we treat everybody today with respect, tolerance, and kindness. Thanks for joining us. Till next time.